if the industry, if designers do their job right, sustainable choices are just part of the ecosystem for all of us to make easy decisions that help our lives, as well as make sure that we reduce the impact on the environment.
If one was to look at just the history of Mumbai and to look at the way that houses, for instance, or housing was built in the early 1900s, and look at how people lived without, let's say, air conditioning. It was not because it wasn't hot back then. It was because the houses were designed in a way that allowed for cross ventilation, that allowed for open spaces, shaded spaces.
What shifts do you feel companies need to make to ensure cooling becomes climate responsible rather than energy intensive?
I think if you look at the building space, primarily one of the largest component in terms of emissions that building sector impacts the climate is because of the use of energy.
All right, Godrej Conscious Collective is an umbrella purpose led initiative by the Godrej Enterprises Group. It's aimed at inspiring, enabling, and accelerating a culture of conscious living in India. It's actually the third edition. It returns to the Godrej Enterprises Group campus in Vikhroli. It's absolutely beautiful what they do with the campus at this time of the year, 12th to 14th. Entry is free, but you need to register at Book My Show. So get on to Book My Show and register. And I have with me three eminent people who are going to be at the festival. So if you want to meet them in person, that might be the place. Please welcome Tejashree Joshi. She's Head Environmental Sustainability at Godrej Enterprises Group. Hi Tejashree, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Hrishi?
Excellent, thank you very much. Henry Skupniewicz, he's Head Godrej Design Lab. Hi Henry, wonderful to have you on the show for the very first time.
Yeah, wonderful to be here, Hrishi.
And Sameep Padora is founder, Sameep Padora and Associates. Hi Sameep, wonderful to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Happy to be here.
We're going to start with Tejashree. Conscious Collective is rethinking what quote-unquote cool means in a warming world. Now, from an ESG perspective, how is Godrej reimagining comfort beyond air conditioning and energy use?
So as far as Godrej Enterprise Group is concerned, I think we have had a very long-standing commitment on sustainability and ESG, which takes form through our Good and Green strategy. Now, if you look at the Good and Green strategy, basically it gets inspired through our purpose for pioneering progress for generations, with a vision to be admired for practices on people, planet, and innovation, with a mission to create engaging experiences for our customers that are unique and intended for patronage over a long period of time, and enabled through our values, particularly on respect, customer centricity, and environmental stewardship. Now, Conscious Collective basically endeavors to shape conscious choices for our customers by engaging them and enabling them to make those choices. This is a platform to bring together solution creators, architects, and with the help of them, also engage customers through unique art forms that resonate with them, and while powerfully delivering the message on importance of choosing the right products and services wisely, which have low impact on environment and conscious towards society. Now, our theme for this year, which is again, claiming the cool, and which is again aligned to what I'm saying. It is, how do you make the community, our customers, our touch points, conscious about the impact of cooling the planet, and how that can be driven through conscious solutions. As far as Godrej is concerned, I think through our products, like you rightly mentioned, we have been endeavoring to do this for over last almost 2.5 decades, with the first transition of our refrigerators to adopt ozone depleting free substances as a refrigerator, but very consciously also looking at the global warming potential of that material, where we made the choice of a transition. And it was a paradigm shift for the industry, and it was the first by an industry in India. But it cannot remain limited to a company doing taking initiatives and doing this with
True.
its products and services. What is important is how is that actually getting communicated to consumers? How is it that it is helping consumers to look at their choices that they make? So it multiplies. I mean, the multiplier effect when a consumer is making right choice is much more than an industry that who tries to do things good with its products and services. At the same time, we are also looking at solution creators, and how do you provide a platform for these solution creators who are creating unique solutions which are scalable, and once they get that form and scale, they would have very large impacts on driving this intent of consciously looking at keeping the climate cool. So I think very briefly, Conscious Collective is going beyond just what the organization can do, engage every form of stakeholders, not only the consumers, their solution creators, architects who decide what goes into building a living space. At the same time, we also look at ecologists and students who are tomorrow going to make these choices in their designs and through their products. But at the same time, how do we actually express that more creatively and something with a form which engages our customers? And that's where the art comes into picture. And Conscious Collective is, engaging all of these stakeholders together to drive this intent on cooling our climate, cooling our planet, and making it more livable for all of us.
So they have a theme every year at Conscious Collective, and this year the
That's right.
theme is Reclaiming Cool, Beat the Heat. I repeat, Reclaiming Cool, Beat the Heat. Henry, I've been to the last two editions, and Godrej Design Lab's contribution has been absolutely fabulous. I've really enjoyed seeing the installations and, witnessing the talks. Let's presume that we're starting from zero. People don't know what Godrej Design Lab is. So start with what Godrej Design Lab is and what's the objective you're driving at Conscious Collective.
Yeah, so Godrej Enterprises Group has been a design company from day one, over 125 years ago. Driven by, a commitment to creating products, creating services, and putting out into the world things that, yes, do good business, but also do something more than that, right? And it's this commitment to creating objects that help people's lives. So about 15 years ago, we were thinking about saying, hey, we've been a leader in the design ecosystem of India for over 125 years. How can we further engage with this larger ecosystem? And along the way, how can we enrich it, particularly by working with younger designers, not just through, going beyond just creating products with people, but saying, how can we learn from other people? How can we create spaces? How can we offer support? And so Conscious Collective is part of that second objective of saying, like, how can we create spaces to pull the larger professional ecosystem together in the same space with consumers, with the public at large, and have conversations specifically about how does design, how does architecture, how does the city, how does, what we're building, how does that affect sustainability and our larger ecology? And how can we make sustainable choices exciting? That, sustainable choices don't all have to look brown or, made out of, burlap or those types of things. If designers do their job right, sustainable choices are just part of the ecosystem for, all of us to make easy decisions that help our lives, as well as make sure that we reduce the impact on the environment.
Now, a special treat for all of you who are listening, watching. Sameep is on ground on the 13th of December at Conscious Collective, and it's a 2 o'clock start in the afternoon. He's going to be in conversation with Diana Kellogg from Diana Kellogg Architects, and they're speaking on the theme Reclaiming Shade, Heat Resilient Design, and the Built Environment. So a small plug in there for you guys. Check listings at Book My Show and register your spots. When you think about comfort in a city like Mumbai, Sameep, what are the small urban moments or spaces that make you pause, make you feel at ease?
Uh, Rishi, I think all of us who've lived in Mumbai or grown up in Mumbai know of this as children. Remember, as children playing in the sun out on the grounds. But then there were these little moments that you would take off, go under the shade of a tree, get an ice gola if that was available, and enjoy the cool breeze. It's actually just as simple as that. The climatic conditions that we live in allow us through very passive and non technology heavy means, we are still able to kind of create environments that are livable, cool, and that allow us to enjoy the outdoors under shade, but also the indoors if they're designed intelligently. Unfortunately, what's happened over many years of development is that we've tended to cut ourselves off from our immediate environments. And in doing that, we've also started neglecting what lies just outside our private realms. And if one was to look at just the history of Mumbai and to look at the way that houses, for instance, or housing was built in the early 1900s, and look at how people lived without, let's say, air conditioning. It was not because it wasn't hot back then. It was because the houses were designed in a way that allowed for cross ventilation, that allowed for open spaces, shaded spaces, that offset the kind of heat that we have in our tropical climate. And it's actually the absence and our loss of memory of these passive techniques that has created this extremely heavy dependence of technology to look at mitigating the heat that we get in our cities. And the overtly built out nature of our development of our plots has only made that worse. And in fact, I think there's one adage that we constantly ask ourselves when we design projects, is that are we leaving the site better off than it was when we first got it? And I think if you're able to ask yourself these critical questions, you will find that a lot of these answers lie buried in the past within our cities and towns. And if we are able to take that and then look at their projective capacities, we can build much, much nicer living environments in the future without using too much resource.
It's very well said. Tejashree, what shifts do you feel companies need to make to ensure cooling becomes climate responsible rather than energy intensive?
I think if you look at the building space, primarily one of the largest component in terms of emissions that building sector impacts the climate is because of the use of energy. And largely, if you look at commercial buildings, particularly, a large portion of this energy goes into utilities that cool the buildings. So I think it is very important that this becomes a center theme for the build sector to look at, but particularly because the amount of depth that cooling solutions have today gone into Indian economies or Indian cities or towns is just around 17 to 20%. And there is a huge scope, and business are going to grow. There are going to be more cooling solutions that are going to get into the market. The penetration is going to increase as we progress. Largely, it will be driven by the climate change and heating. And therefore, I think looking at very radically different solutions on cooling is going to become an essential component of how we progress. Also, for industry to look at how do we create those cooling solutions which are extremely energy efficient. We are looking at, for example, as I mentioned earlier, one of the initiatives that as an industry we took as a pioneering initiative was looking at how do we transition to responsible refrigerants, at the same time keeping a long-term perspective on what is the impact on global warming with that choice, and which we did around, like I mentioned, around 2.5 decades ago. But as we have progressed, we have also started looking at particularly making uh, conscious designs of the building space or build spaces, which are aligned to look at all resources which go into a building, including water, generation of waste, how is the soil and the location where the development is happening preserved in its natural state to the maximum extent. How do we actually retain rainwater on the site? so as to minimize the depletion of groundwater that we see rampantly everywhere. But all of these, while this may seem as different indicators, they all connect to keeping the climate cool. As we retain water in the ground, it will keep our grounds cool. It will reduce the emissions or the heat emissions from the ground. The landscapes that we design are looked at cooling. They are native. They support the native biodiversity. At the same time, they use less resources because of sustainable landscape practices. And overall, the projects or the location, they keep cooling the surrounding environments for the building. But when we come to the core design of the building, passive architecture is a very important component to upfront reduce the requirements of cooling for a building. May it be how do we design our roofs? What do we do with the insulations of the roofs? We have one of the largest terrace gardens in Mumbai, which actually keeps our building a lot cooler than it would require through mechanized systems of cooling. The passive facades, the glass that we make a choice on in the buildings, they all add up to reducing the energy used during the operation phase of the building. So very conscious designs, even on choosing the mechanized systems in terms of what type of air handling systems, air conditioning systems, recovery of heat from the systems which go back again plowing into the mechanical systems for reducing the energy use. All these are components of a green building, and we have very actively been using that for many years, designing up buildings to be more and more greener, reducing its impact on all of these aspects. But cooling becomes quite center, as I said, and a lot of these design interventions are ultimately aiming at reducing our operational footprints in terms of maintaining the cools. But just to take a minute more, we can't just be looking at only the commercial buildings, but we also need to look at large component of real estate, which is a residential building design. And that's exactly also where we have deployed these principles. We're looking at individual units in terms of how do we keep the indoor environment cleaner, how do we keep it more healthier. At the same time, overall design buildings which are more cooler, more naturally oriented in terms of reducing the heat gain into the buildings, and therefore reducing the active use of energy for cooling by maintaining even the landscapes more cleaner with our landscape practices. So I think all of these integrate in terms of aiming in reduction of large term and a long term impact on energy use for cooling our buildings and build spaces. And again, just to plug in, the conscious collective is to make our consumers aware of this intent and make our consumers have these responsible choices when they go out looking for solutions for their need. So I think it takes a center stage, and all of the industry needs to look at beyond available solutions, look at more scalable, innovative technologies. In fact, we are now working also on a technology where we're looking at can we actually do away with the refrigerants for cooling and more towards more electric based systems which can be powered through renewable energies, which will bring down the energy use for cooling solutions to a large extent.
Back to the program at Conscious Collective on the 14th of December at the Godrej Enterprises Group campus in Vikhroli. Henry Skupniewicz is going to be in conversation with Rahul Bhushan from North Studio and Where We Belong. It's a discussion and book signing that's at 3:15 in the afternoon, so you might want to sign up for that on Book My Show. Henry, you're known as a design lab for experimenting with ideas before they become real products. How do you help designers turn creative thinking into something people can actually use and then feel?
Yeah, so, I have a great job of that. I get to see designers within Godrej Enterprises Group, as well as a lot of young firms, students, startups outside, at different stages of their experimentation or R&D. And one common thing is that when you're in the thick of things, when you're creating a business or you're running a business or trying to release products before festive season, there's often a crunch. And so we have a program called the Godrej Design Lab Fellowship Program, where we give grants to up and coming emerging voices in the larger design ecosystem. So that's a 1-year program. We give a grant, fairly no strings attached, and basically say, work on a project that's meaningful for you. And what that format does is it gives a lot of space, it gives time, and gives, kind of reduces a lot of that pressure to move maybe uh, a little bit, quicker than somebody would want to. So, we funded projects that go from furniture design to performance to understanding, integrating technology into age-old vernacular, cooling systems. Um, and so this grant really allows for them to go deeper, to go 20%, 30%, deeper or more elaborate than they normally would. And so this year at Conscious Collective in Vic we are showcasing 6 projects that we funded over the last year. So ranging from uh, building systems to uh, cooling systems, using code to create art and music, all sorts of really exciting things that young Indian designers are working on today, are integrating into their practice, and that we've been really lucky to support over the last year. And should be, I think, really engaging for everybody to see the work, to actively talk with the designers on ground at Conscious Collective.
Sameep, you gave a wonderful example of how, as humans, we naturally seek relief, shade, sense of belonging. You likened it to, our childhood, where we would look for shade after playing and then look for a nice gola. Cities can feel incredibly overwhelming, and your work often uncovers potential in overlooked parts of the city. I mean, how do you approach designing spaces that give people a chance to kind of slow down, breathe, feel lighter? And also, spaces teach you as much as you teach spaces or work with spaces. What have these everyday spaces taught you about how people gravitate to these things naturally? Relief, shade, sense of belonging.
That's an excellent question, Rishi. I think one of the things that one needs to do to be able to see the potential of what actually lies around us is to almost to get into a mindset of unlearning what you think the city is made of, but also get into the mode of being almost like an archaeologist, kind of running through these layers of what the city has become and trying to uncover what lies below it. In a couple of projects that we worked on, both in Mumbai and outside, what we've tried to do is look at, let's say, for instance, how courtyards used to function. So in a hostel that we've done in Kota, which is in Rajasthan, which has an extreme amount of heat, as you can well imagine, there already exists an intelligence that is built into this idea of the courtyard and how it becomes a device to allow for hot air to move through the building, rise up, and creating these kind of passive cooling systems for people staying inside. And this was prevalent not just in Havelis, but also in small houses that people lived in. The ordinary folk courtyards have been a part of our architectural heritage. And we've tended to forget about it. And you'll find that, many houses or many buildings still have courtyards, but now they're glassed off. So you only have them in, as a kind of symbol of what a traditional device was, but no longer active. And I think what we need to do is look back at all of these symbols that we have in some sense carried on stylistically, but have lost the ability to understand their core reason for being there in the first place, this kind of performative intelligence that these devices have. So even simple things like if you look at some of these old chawls, you'll find that there are window systems that have 3 panels. They're divided vertically into 3 panels, right? So each of those panels actually functions as a particular airway and a visual device. So in the night, when people are lying down on the floor, the lower panels are closed and the upper panels are open. So you still get wind coming in while there is privacy because people are sleeping downstairs. So it's things like this, that this idea of devices like window formats, jalis, courtyards, that if we can start looking at actively again and thinking of it really as a means to, like Tejashree mentioned, reduce heating loads and to create comfort, I think we would start being able to create much more sensitive living environments as well. So that's just a quick response to what you were
It's
asking.
lovely. Circularity, let's talk about that, Tejashree. It's been a growing focus at Godrej Enterprises Group. How can circular thinking help reduce the heat impact, whether through materials, whether through manufacturing, or even product life cycles?
So Rishi, actually, if you look at circularity, I think everybody needs to have rechange the perspective on materials in terms of waste really not being waste, but as a probably a misplaced resource, and that's where it starts. At Godrej Enterprise Group, we actually look at the end-to-end design of any new idea through a life cycle analysis or an impact lens. uh, Look at the hotspots that any of your product or service is going to create over its life cycle, particularly at the end of its life, and where is it going to end up after the product's useful life is over. And then look at all those materials which are hotspots in terms of impact. So there, the decision making starts in terms of what do we change in the product, or what changes do we make in the service to reduce those hotspots. May it be material, may it be energy use, may it be transportation of raw materials and its embodied carbon. So when we are looking at cooling, we are looking at carbon, we are looking at overall impact of a product. And therefore, I think each of these changes in choices is going to be impactful on the overall life cycle impact. Reclaiming all these materials in form of either energy, in form of water, in form of materials, how it gets responsibly channelized back to another useful form, or either a useful form within the same product life cycle, is how we are looking at circularity for design. And I'll tell you an example of waste heat. So we're looking at waste heat recovery for all of the mechanical systems wherever we can plug them. Use that heat back into our processes and services, so as to reduce, the generation of more or use of more electricity for driving these processes. In build spaces, water becomes a very, very important and a large resource use, particularly buildings with very high density footprints. And circularity of water use has been practiced by us almost over like 5 decades now. And we look at every drop of water in terms of circularity. All of these actually contribute to keep our buildings more sustainable and more cooler. In terms of material, and it's a very important aspect because there are a lot of blind spots in terms of material and its materials impact on climate change and heating of the planet. So making choices on material which are low on embodied carbon, low on embodied energy, which are sourced locally, which augments with the local architecture and the principles of traditional architectures, which keep down heating, which keeps structures cool, and therefore reduced use of active energy during operations phase. uh, Making those material recycle, and instead of them and ending up in landfill, destroying the ecology and therefore destroying our sinks of heat and carbon within the cities and surrounding us, is very important. And when we design our product, services, buildings, we look at all of these aspects in terms of when we have adopted the principle of circularity. And so I think uh, everything that we design um, works around this principle, works to mainstream and base our designs on this principle of circularity. And while when we work with our consumers, we also endeavor to make them conscious of what we are doing, on how this will help them make their choices better and be responsible in terms of what they are consuming and what they're putting back into the environment. And I have many product examples to cite this, how we drive this. One of them, and very quickly, which I can mention, is use of construction and demolition waste back into making building blocks, which again go back into a building. I think that's a very classic example of how circularity in end-to-end life cycle of a building can be driven. So yeah, I think probably that is the most important principle basis which we design our products and systems.
Conscious Collective, the festival, 12th, 13th, and 14th of December at the Godrej Enterprises Group campus in Vikhroli, has dialogues on conscious living, collective responsibility, and resilient business. Has specially curated workshops for those interested in design, architecture, art, and creative exploration. Specially curated workshops designed to empower children, tomorrow's change makers. So lots of children's activities, and of course, immersive, mindful experiences, installations, and film screenings. Henry, if you had to leave designers with one simple principle for creating in a hotter world, what would it be?
So I think across for designers, whether it's a hotter world, any topic around sustainability, our job is to work with uh, our partners, whether that's industry, our fabricators, our producer communities, in order to do a lot of the thinking up front. This is a very complicated issue, right? And there's no simple solution. One solution might be right for Mumbai, another might be right for Delhi, another might be right for um, a, another place, like, on the other side of the world. So that is a complicated thing to put all on the consumer, right? When I go into a shop, I'm often confused. And so I have to put a lot of trust in the designers, the companies that are producing the products. So I think that that is about gauging and upholding a commitment to doing that deep thinking, trying to understand what the right solution is in order to enable our customers, in order to help them out, right? Uh, and I think that uh, you know, in talking with a lot of designers, particularly in product design, in architecture, a lot of the answers lie right at our feet. Local materials, local processes, local skills, right? It's about saying that there's so much intelligence, there's so much technology, whether that's new technology or old technology, that's right there to mine. And that we don't need to um, put in a lot of energy in order to uh, 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 try to pull things from around the world or get crazy materials from other parts of the country, right? There's so many great things right here that help us reduce our impact on the environment, and also a lot of knowledge that if we look to the past, that if we mine and understand how it works, then we also understand how our forefathers, designers from the past, have responded to the need for climatic comfort right where we're at.
Sameep, if you could make one simple design change in Indian neighborhoods to make them feel cooler, more welcoming, what would you choose?
Um, That's a very, very good question. I think one thing that I would choose is to remove all boundary walls between buildings, to look at the idea of space not being these partitioned plots that we live on, but really where our habitations are part of a larger neighborhood. So in some sense, I'm arguing not just for a conscious collective, but also for a collective consciousness that understands this. And yeah, that would be my one takeaway.
Lovely. Go to designlab.godrejenterprises.com. Designlab.godrejenterprises.com. Look for Conscious Collective. And of course, you can get on to Book My Show. There's a listings page which gives you all the events, the talks, the workshops, all the visionaries you can meet. And of course, you can register there. Tejashree, it's got to be my last question. Conscious Collective brings designers, architects, communities together. In your view, how can this cross-sector collaboration accelerate India's shift towards cooler, more equitable, climate-resilient living?
Yes, I think Conscious Collective is basically a leadership step in terms of innovating um, how do you enable conscious choices. So one thing is it is centering lived experience in climate adaptation, especially this year's theme of being heat resilience and gender and craft, which traditionally probably policies and philanthropies often overlook, and therefore this is basically bringing in what probably is not actively being discussed during policy formations, during strategy formations of organizations, and also probably during communication with the consumers. It's also a platform which is for cross-sector prototyping, creating real-world test beds where practitioners and communities can co-create climate solutions, bringing piloting and scale to these innovative solutions, which can shift choices and move the world toward more conscious collective consumptions. And also it actually probably looks at shifting the discourse from abstract probably ethics to cultural, right-based, community-driven, rooted in our traditions and culture, actions which reinvent what climate leadership can be looked at as in India. So taking this forward, I think expanding the climate justice frames beyond what an organization does, beyond what policies define, and beyond the mere business of it. I think it aligns to what, as a nation, probably we want to achieve. It aligns with our national pledges and engaging all stakeholders, engaging all actors and players who are going to drive these choices, who are going to drive these changes, and also look at materials, look at comfort, look at regenerative designs and equity in everyday life, and therefore aligning consumers and users to do this, mobilizing this through culture, using immersive designs, craft, food, performances, sparking participation, and collectively building beyond typical tech or policy circles would look at, and engaging larger communities and contributors towards more lasting impact. And probably Conscious Collective is trying to do this, create this buzz, create this discussions, create this dialogues and collaborative thinking in terms of addressing larger problems that as a community, as a world, we are facing.
All right, Henry, Sameep, Tejashree, really appreciate your time, and see you at Conscious Collective, 12, 13, 14 December. Cheers.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
94.3 Radio 1.